Welcome. Our centering music this morning is Songs of Sanctuary by Carl Jenkins and played by Sarah Hager on piano. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to First Parish in Lexington. My name is Elizabeth Yoss, and I am one of the worship associates here. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, guided by 8 principles and inspired by many sources. Whether you're joining us for the first time this morning or for the 500th time, whether you're online or whether you are here in the sanctuary, we are glad for your presence this morning, and we hope that you'll find many reasons to return and hopefully gladly explore the variety of other programming that we have both online and in person. We have a few announcements this morning. First, there's an announcement from our stewardship team, a reminder that we are currently in the midst of our annual stewardship campaign. If you need information about the campaign or you need information about how to make a pledge, see the weekly update, which is an email, or you can speak to at church during the coffee hour to our campaign co-chairs, Tom Rich and Omar Kadari. I also want to remind everyone that on March 31st, we have an invitation from our Sikh neighbors to meet with us, and they will introduce us to their culture and their faith, including a kirtan led by children and a joint prayer with our Reverend Ann. It is from 6 to 9, and you do need to sign up. We're hoping to get many of you, maybe even up to 60 people. Would be great if we would sign up for that. That would be wonderful. I want to remind you, if you haven't seen already, we are doing Ferry Beach this week, which is a Memorial Day weekend that we share up in Ferry Beach, Maine with Concord. If you go online on our website under Community, there's a link here for for Ferry Beach. You can get more information about how to sign up, and if you're interested in coming and want to help with some of the programming, please see me or Deb Weiner-Soul. We have an announcement from Voices on the Green.
Good morning. My name's Suzanne Adams, and I am here in my capacity for Voices on the Green. We are planning our next show in our Storytelling and Music series on May 5th Friday night. The theme is I Was There, and we ask storytellers to share experiences in which they were an eyewitness, which really is every moment of your life, right? But we're asking you to think about how that intersects with the history of your community, of the world, of this country. Now, of course, if you have a story about how your life changed dramatically on 9/11, or because of Roe versus Wade, or because of school integration laws, that's great, and we definitely want to hear those stories. But I also want you to think about some of the more ordinary moments of your life. Now, if you are over 40, and let's face it, most of us here are, you can remember a time before cell phones, right? You might have a story about calling someone up for a date and having to talk to their father on the phone first. You might remember a time when you got sent to the principal's office because your skirt was too short or your jeans were too low. Anyway, I'm hoping to open this up to some of the memories that you might share with your children or nieces, nephews, other young people that you take for granted as ordinary. But they all happened in a particular cultural moment. And thinking about these things may open a whole kaleidoscope of memories for you, leading to a story that you want to tell. If you get that story, please talk to me or David Rose soon so that we can entertain the possibility of you telling that story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. And the Climate Action Team.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Bob Quall, and it's my pleasure to announce that the Elizabeth Howe Lecture Committee and the First Parish Climate Action Team, which I represent, are very excited to announce that on Sunday, March 26th at 4 o'clock, Ernest Moniz, who was the U.S. Secretary of Energy from 2013 to 2017 and is continuing his research at MIT, and Robert Armstrong, director of the MIT Energy Initiative and a member of First Parish, will engage in a conversation about energy transitions in the face of the climate crisis. More information will follow, but for now, please put the date Sunday, March 26th at 4 o'clock in your calendars for this special program. Thank you.
All right, now I invite everyone to put your cell phones in worship mode. We will not be doing the community joys and concerns this Sunday. We will go back to that texting and thing that we do next week. And now it is my pleasure to welcome the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl to the pulpit this morning. Reverend Earl has served as the Executive Director and Senior Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry for the last 8 years. We also have a very long history with the urban ministry here at First Parish in Lexington, and some of you, I think, already have a printout that describes it, and you can also get it at the coffee hour at the urban ministry table. Welcome, Reverend Earl.
Nothing changed last night. The dark fell and the moon rose, its light casting across the water. Every struggle still waited. Nothing changed last night. We exhaled and slept, maybe fitfully. Nothing changed. And yet this, we rise again. We rise with the gifts the universe has embedded in every cell of us. Gifts of song, of dance, of laughter, gifts of wisdom and strength and courage. Nothing changed last night, but a new day gives itself to our hearts, to our will, to this community. A day ready for us, a day needing us, welcoming us. Come, let us worship and begin again.
Our introit this morning will be a prayer of compassion by Gwyneth Mocker, sung by the Sanctuary Choir. It is my pleasure. We have Amy Jabinson, one of our board members, here to light our chalice this morning. The reading I have is called The Fire of Commitment by Paul Sprecher. We light this chalice to kindle the fire of commitment, to spread our beloved faith. Proclaim the good news that we are all worthy and all are welcome, and God is love, and none shall be left behind. May we carry this flame to all we encounter, letting our lives shine with its glow. And now please rise in body and spirit and join me in saying our affirmation of faith. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its scepter, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another, and that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Please be seated.
Good morning. I share with you a story today that Oh, there it is. Okay. Dream Street, written by Tricia Elam Walker. Collages by Akua Holmes. Welcome to Dream Street, the best street in the world. Just ask the people who live here. The houses and the dreams inside are as different as thumbprints. The sidewalks are wide enough for huge chalk drawings and giant hopscotch boards. Children from all over the neighborhood come to play until the streetlights go on. Yusuf waits for his brother Biko at the corner of Humboldt Avenue and Dream Street. He's thinking about how their mom always says, "Don't leave the house without your crown." She likes them to tell stories about their ancestors who were queens and kings with dreams they never gave up on. Each morning, unless it's raining, Mr. Sidney reads the newspaper on his stoop, dressed to the nines. Miss Sarah likes to say, "What's the nines?" a child will ask, and Miss Sarah will answer, "Fancy, fancy." Mr. Sidney is a retired mail carrier, living his dream of never having to wear a uniform again. He tips his big brown fedora and greets everyone with, "Don't wait to have a great day. Create one." Belle catches butterflies in a jar when they fly near Miss Sarah's bird bath, but she always lets them go before too long. "Everything has a right to be free," she says, "and every butterfly is different, just like snowflakes and people and dreams." Belle wants to become a scientist who studies butterflies. She says there's a special name for it, Lepidopterist. Azaria's house is next to the park. That girl can really jump some rope. She can do double Dutch on one leg at a time. She can turn around and touch the ground. She can jump by herself with 2 ropes. She can even dance, jump, and dream of winning a shiny trophy one day, all at the same time. When she flies down the street swinging her rope, she lifts her long brown legs as high as the sun. Miss Sarah, also known as the Hat Lady, is Belle's great auntie. Her voice is only a whisper, but there are stories between the lines of her face that she'll share when you come close. She has lived on Dream Street longer than anyone, even longer than some of the trees, watching children turn into grown-ups and listening to their dreams along the way. Zion walks around the corner to the library to read skyscraper tall piles of books that take him on adventures around the world. When other kids talk or laugh, he tells them, "Shh," because doesn't everyone know you're supposed to be quiet in there? Some days, Miss Barbara, the librarian, hands him a brand new book and says softly, "I have a feeling this is your cup of tea." "Can boys be librarians?" Zion whispers to her, because it's his dream to become one. "Of course they can," she whispers back. He flashes a bright smile and continues his journey through the pages of the next book. Edie lives at the top of the hill and searches for treasures that others throw away. She collects smooth rocks, broken jewelry, leaves and feathers, and adds them to her drawings of people on Dream Street. Meanwhile, her cousin Tari pays attention when new folks come around so she can make up stories about them. In her notebook, she scribbles down the things she hears when they don't know she's listening. The cousins dream that someday they will create a picture book together about everyone they know and meet on Dream Street. The Phillips family has 5 boys: Dudley, Donald, Donardo, Dexter, and Duke, all named after jazz musicians. Those boys are more than a handful, some say, but the brothers know not to act up or show out. On Sundays before church, their daddy, Mr. Phillips, lines them up on the front porch for inspection, from hats down to shined shoes. He dreams of forming his own jazz band with the Phillips boys one day. Uh-oh, looks like little Duke forgot his bow tie. The garden behind Desiree's house overflows with plants you don't see every day: purple lilies, red desert peas, and yellow passion flowers. Her magnolia trees smell like milk and honey and make your eyes feel heavy as if they want to close. Desiree's locks are so long she can wrap them around her shoulders like a shawl. Sometimes she and her grandbaby, Little Song, fall asleep together. Little Song makes sweet dreams and sounds, little girl dreams. Makes sweet sounds and dreams, little girl dreams. When she was small, Miss Paula liked to twirl on her tiptoes, up and down Dream Street. Now she teaches African dance at the rec center, her head wrapped round and round with bright fabric until it's as high as a pyramid. Her feet move lightning fast, slap, slap, slapping, and tap, tap, tapping the floor, keeping pace with the drummer's hands. Watch out! You might get dizzy if you stare too long. Sometimes when the rhythm takes hold, her wrap unravels and falls to the ground. She never stops moving, even as she stoops down to pick it up. Little Benjamin, who lives in the purple house next to the park, is tucked snugly into bed, but he doesn't want to go to sleep and dream. He might miss something important. He hugs his teddy bear Tyler, who isn't ready for sleep either. Instead, they count the stars that sparkle through the bedroom window and listen to laughter outside from the big kids who don't have to go to bed yet. The children who live and play on Dream Street can become whatever and whoever they want, because their dreams are nourished and cared for, just like Desiree's flowers. There is no need to worry or to rush. They take their time, growing and playing, learning and living, and soaring skyward toward all the adventures that await them. You can't see the tiny print, but this is a reminder that if you check out this book, you can learn more about this wonderful writer and collages. And the handout that you have today, and there's some more at Social Hour, introduces the long history that First Parish and many individual members of this community have, of connection and work with our UU Urban Ministry. Today's story highlights a recent gift to First Parish, celebrating this connection. Jane Beswick shares, I'm just going to let her wave, she's over there. 2 years ago, I was dazzled by the wonderful Museum of Fine Arts exhibition of the artist, I'm actually not sure how to say her name, Ikua Holmes, and her beautiful collages, many made for children's books. I learned that Ikua was brought up in Roxbury and studied art in Boston. The print I got for First Parish, Lexington, reflects the joy and magic of childhood and the beauty of all children. Connie Counts, oh, she's right there, shares. Susan Thompson, textile artist, is a leader in the Roxbury arts community. Her quilt entitled, "What My Grandmother Taught Me," with its beautiful colors and pattern in the African and African American quilting tradition, really spoke to me. Her quilts are infused with prayers to the ancestors, whether Christian, Native American, Muslim, or Buddhist. Susan says, "I am very much encouraged by my African heritage and my ancestors who had the strength to survive and be free in an unequal society. I thought that the quilt would inspire our social justice work at First Parish." You can see their gifts on our slide and in our parish hall when we go to social hour. Many thanks to Jane and Connie for bringing this beauty and celebration of diversity to First Parish. And everyone, I invite you to stand in body and or spirit as I invite the kids and youth to join me for a special spiritual practices activity. I invite adults to, again, stand in body and or spirit and join us in singing "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," number 126 in your hymnals.
Our reading this morning comes from the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Africa African-American scholar and filmmaker Omale Atetunde says, racism is a systemic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality. But for most whites, however, racism is like murder. The concepts exist, but someone actually has to commit it in order for it to happen. This limited view of such a multi-layered syndrome cultivates the sinister nature of racism and, in fact, perpetuates racist phenomena rather than eradicates them. The good-bad frame is a false dichotomy. All people hold prejudices, especially across racial lines in a society deeply divided by race. I can be told that everyone is equal by my parents. I can have friends of color, and I may not tell racist jokes, yet I am still affected by the forces of racism as a member of a society in which racism is the bedrock. I will still be seen as white, treated as white, and experience life from a white perspective. I will have a white worldview and a white frame of reference. In a society where race clearly matters, our race profoundly shapes us. If we want to challenge this construct, we must make an honest accounting of how it is manifest in our own lives and in the society around us. Our anthem this morning is Take Down These Walls by Brian Tate. We have our sanctuary choir singing, Michael Bruce on guitar, Will Loesch on bass, and Zach Sevier on drums.
Beautiful. Thank you. Good morning. It is good to be back again at First Parish this morning. I want to first thank my good colleague, Reverend Ann, for inviting me and welcoming me back. I also want to let you know that my colleague Annie Stubbs is there and will be in the social hour afterwards. So if this whets your appetite to learn more about the Urban Ministry, please stop by, sign up for our mailing list, and learn more from Annie. You have seen that there's this insert in your order of service that talks about the long and deep connections between First Parish and the Urban Ministry. I love that you all, your delegates, created that. Thank you. You'll read about some of the connections, which include longtime support from friends like Stephen Schick and Joanne Mulready Schick, Helen and Don Cohen, Jane Beswick, Teresa Jacobson, John and Agnes Howell, Lois Wells, and Omar and Ann Kadari. So thank those supporters. And you've supported us through gathering holiday gifts for our Renewal House shelter for with gift cards. Reverend Schick also has done some volunteer training, working with survivors in our workforce program and leading Speaking by Heart workshops for our staff, which they loved. And I also want to lift up the longtime support of Lou Counts and Connie Counts. Connie and her late husband Lou were steadfast champions of the Urban Ministry because of their steadfast conviction about racial justice and working for it. And importantly, more than 20 years ago, Connie was actually on the board of the Urban Ministry when the organization made a decision to move from downtown Boston to fully be in Roxbury. And that was really an important step to get us where we are today, which you'll hear more about. But I did want to honor Connie with a little picture that shows our beautiful campus. So I'm going to give this to her. This season, if we look out the window with the cold and the snow and the sometimes gray skies, is the time our gardens sleep. It is also the time when our dreams of the next garden begin. So our seed catalogs are coming, and we've shaken off the fatigue of last season in the garden when we were dealing in August and September with the heat and pulling weeds and fading plants. Now we again begin to imagine the possibilities. What are we going to plant this spring? We might be sketching out the rows in our vegetable gardens or thinking about the annuals or the perennials that we'll plant and that will blossom. So are there any gardeners here? Any gardeners? Some hands. So I have been a gardener of sorts since I was 11. And I went into our backyard and I turned over some dirt and I planted carrots too closely, never thin, that kind of emerged as these gargantuan orange bulb with all these spindly carrot legs. And I have continued over the years to dig in the soil, plant seeds, plant vegetables, but always somewhat an impatient and impulsive gardener. Are there any impatient and impulsive gardeners? Yeah, you feel me. So last winter, I decided to slow down and deepen my gardening practice, and I enrolled in a Master Gardener certification program. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't drawn to the idea of becoming a master gardener, an expert holding impressive knowledge beyond that of ordinary gardeners. But instead, it was like this. It was like having this door opened, not to mastery, but to the vastness of all that I don't know. And what I earned my certification in was the certification of knowing all that I don't know. and that I formerly didn't know, and then in fact, I will never fully know. So that's what I earned a certification in. So instead of tips on fertilizing tomatoes was this world of what it means to tend to the earth right around me, from the value of native plants to the danger of invasive species, to how rain will flow off of our roofs and down gutter spouts, and if it flows onto a paved surface, go right into the stormwater and pollute the bay. The thing that I most clearly learned in my master gardening course is that if master gardener means being an expert, that I will never be one. I will always be trying and failing and trying again. And that is just what it feels like in my work at the Urban Ministry. That is just what it feels like to do the work of racial justice. To begin a journey that shows me far more than I imagined, that I will never be an expert in, and that is more essential than I first understood. So it's good to be here with you this morning to share that journey with you. First Parish is one of 46 Unitarian Universalist congregations around Greater Boston that are members of the UU Urban Ministry. And we are a 190-year-old, nearly, nonprofit that was founded by the Reverend Joseph Tuckerman, a Unitarian clergyman. Reverend Tuckerman was committed to listening to those who were oppressed and to educating privileged Bostonians about poverty and the injustice that created that poverty. He became known as a father of modern social work. He merged the justice work of Unitarian congregations, and the Urban Ministry's member congregations have been central to its work since. Over time, we've done many things: built elder housing, had an Asian-appropriate food pantry, a free legal clinic. In 1976, one of the Urban Ministry's member congregations, First Church in Roxbury, folded. The congregation had been founded in Roxbury in the 1600s by the Puritans, and the congregation had worshiped there through the centuries. Roxbury, in time, became an affluent, white Boston suburb. But by the 1970s, the urban and suburban landscapes were changing, and Roxbury had become the heart of Boston's African-American community. Through the decades in Boston, government-sanctioned covenant restrictions, redlining, and racist FHA and HUD policies had sparked an exodus of white people from city to suburbs, while African Americans could only find housing in neighborhoods like Roxbury, where the housing stock was older, where banks refused home improvement loans, and where the government had disinvested. It was in that context that the congregation of First Church Roxbury dwindled. So First Church Roxbury's last members decided to close, and they bequeathed their property and historic buildings, which included Boston's oldest surviving wood frame church building and a nearby parish hall, on an abundant green space overlooking the Boston skyline. They bequeathed that to the Urban Ministry. That's where I arrived 8 years ago. Our programs then were a domestic violence shelter, youth programming, weekend activities for young children. Beneath that array of programs, though, pulsed something else. It was the work of confronting racism in Greater Boston. Our location cried out for it. That wasn't what I signed up for, though. On my first week, the killers of Michael Brown were not indicted. You may recall that Michael Brown was an 18-year-old African-American youth shot and killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. That week, my first, the staff came to me and asked me to make a public statement on the death of Michael Brown and on the fact that the officers who killed him were not held accountable. I remember that evening sitting in my office, nervous, lighting a candle, just trying to breathe, because I didn't want to make a statement. Because I was new, and I didn't know what to think about the killing of Michael Brown, and I didn't know how to talk about racism, and that wasn't the work that I had come to do. I came to run programs to help people. That's what I came to do. What I was called to do was a whole other matter. The urban ministry was given this extraordinary gift of location, one we are called to live into. We are grounded in this amazing community of Roxbury. Its story tells the national story of racism, urban renewal, and segregation. And it also tells the story of resilience, Black community organizing and resistance, and cultural richness. And we are encircled by communities and neighborhoods also shaped by racism in reverse, shaped by policies that have given benefits to people who are white, policies that have kept these neighborhoods white by design, and that have UU congregations in the center of them, congregations who are called to dismantle racism and which have the power to make change. That is an extraordinary opportunity for our faith to do the work of dismantling racism and of real justice. Over time, this work at the intersection of communities has cured me of my reluctance to deal with race. I learn daily about the history of racism and how racism is foundational in this country and that it shows up in every single system. It is the root cause of enormous suffering, from the racial wealth gap to health disparities, to the heart of the prison industrial complex, to the reason why our communities are so segregated. Here are a few of the measures of the impact of racism from the Brookings Institute. One in 3 Black men born in 2001 will spend time in prison in their lifetime. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, the juvenile justice system confines Black youth at 4 times the rate of white youth. 1 in 3 Black families have 0 or negative wealth. Many of us by now have heard the statistic from the Federal Reserve that showed that in Boston, white Bostonians have a net worth, your assets minus your debts, of $247,000, while Black Bostonians have a net worth of $8. You're not mishearing me, $8. In the United States, 1 in 3 Black children live in poverty, which is 3 times as likely as white children. 1 in 7 Black children suffer from asthma, and according to the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, Black Americans are 3 times as likely to die from asthma. Just one example of a health indicator. The average lifespan in Roxbury is 30 years less than it is in Whiteback Bay, 1 mile away. Meanwhile, white people continue to hold most of the power, control, and resources. D'Angelo, in a book, White Fragility, gives these examples from 2016, 2017, which may have changed, but only slightly in 2023. The 10 richest Americans are 100% white. U.S. Congress, 90% white. U.S. governors, 96% white. Top military advisors, 100% white. People who decide what TV shows we see, 93% white. People who decide what books we read, 90% white. People who decide what news is covered, 85% white. Teachers, 82% white. Full-time college professors, 84% white. This is the world that we move in, where white people hold power and control of systems that still benefit and reflect us and that disadvantage Black Americans. Nearly 2 years ago, the Urban Ministry adopted a new mission that faces that reality. We committed to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. We know that we alone can't dismantle racism in Greater Boston, but we can use our strengths to make change in Greater Boston. Since adopting our new mission, we've been wrestling with how to now live into it, what programs and work to change, to begin, to reshape. It is hard and messy work. It takes trying and learning and rolling up our sleeves. And lessons from the garden are ones that I bring into this work too. So here they are, my lessons from the garden. Lesson 1, test the soil. That is, what is in this soil? What is our history? What's beneath our feet? The Urban Ministry is committed to examining our history, the inherited history of First Church in Roxbury and the history of the Urban Ministry. We engaged last year a researcher to look into the history of enslavers and the enslaved connected to First Church Roxbury. He recently completed his research, which shows a depth of enslavement related to the church, with even its very first minister an enslaver. You may have read about our public release of the report last month. I shared this morning the history of how we inherited our campus by white flight in 1976, because it's important that we name inheriting this space in the heart of Roxbury from a white congregation. That is part of our legacy. And we need to look more closely at the Urban Ministry, too, as an historically white organization, to look at our own stories and mistakes. We all need to do that work. In Robin DiAngelo's book, we heard from African-American scholar Amawale Akintunde, who said, and I'll share again, quote, "Racism is a systematic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality," end quote. But for white people, DiAngelo says, it's invisible, like water. We see race as something that's part of the Black community, like Roxbury, but not necessarily as part of our white communities and history. And our work is to learn to see the water in which we are swimming. DiAngelo writes, quote, "Predominantly white neighborhoods are not outside of race. They are teeming with race," end quote. One way to see that water is in telling and holding up the histories that underpin our churches, our communities, our institutions. Lesson 2, fix the soil. At the Urban Ministry, we are committed to change from within. After the murder of George Floyd, our organization made clear commitments. One was researching our history. Another is ensuring greater representation of people of color on our board. Our priority is cultivating more community members so our board looks like the communities that we partner with. UUs, many of whom are white, former program participants, mostly people of color, and Roxbury community members of color. Today, 6 of 15 board members are people of color, and when I come back next year, I hope I will be able to tell you that it's closer to half. We have diversified our staff leadership and are working to recruit volunteers of color so that at every level there is shared power and voice. Without that, injustice persists. Fix the soil. 3, plant plants where they should be planted. That sounds obvious, but for some gardeners like me, it's not always so obvious. For years, I planted plants where I thought they would look good. I didn't pay attention to the direction, the shade, the wind, and that's why my sun-loving lilac bush was planted under a large leafy tree and didn't bloom. Likewise, we can't create programs based on what staff or congregations think sound good. We need to hear what the community wants. Last summer, we convened focus groups of Roxbury business owners and neighbors to ask how we can partner in closing the racial wealth gap. And we are taking that information and shaping a pilot project, one that will match the pro bono skills and abilities in member congregations with Black-owned businesses seeking to grow. We've been meeting with Roxbury nonprofits to see how they would want to partner with member congregations. So one example is City Life Vita Urbana, which protects the rights of tenants being displaced in Black neighborhoods because of gentrification. They've asked us to help with their mailings, and we had UUs from member congregations come to our site in Roxbury and oversee a mailing to more than 1,000 tenants to let them know their rights, and we're getting ready for our second batch. We need to listen and listen more. There are wonderful opportunities to plant the right programs when we do. Lesson 4, pull weeds early. Over time, we've faced the legacy of well-intentioned but sometimes clumsy people who are white like me, seeking to do work in a Black community. I once met with a supporter of the urban ministry who in passing told me how he liked his neighborhood in the suburbs and also said, as if explaining what he liked, that it's all white people and it was safe. And I was taken aback and stunned, and I was trying to understand what he meant, and in doing so, I was just quiet. That's a silence that I regret. I could have just asked him, so what do you mean by that? Let's talk about that. Instead, I allowed that weed to grow. When I came to the urban ministry, staff of color shared stories like that with me. They echo and are painful still. We're committed to doing better. We've been building a more robust onboarding program for volunteers and staff, one that includes cultural competence training and an understanding of Roxbury's history and the government-sanctioned reasons why our communities are segregated. White people need to enter communities of color not to fix or help, but with a humility that is born of an understanding of how this injustice was created by design. And we all need to learn how to give and receive hard feedback when we do and say things that perpetuate racism and hurt. Every gardener knows it is best to pull weeds as soon as you see them and they don't disappear by ignoring them. And finally, lesson 5. Truly lasting gardens are not built in a day or a season. When we adopted our new mission statement in 2021, it was the end of a multi-year journey. But this new mission is now the beginning of another long journey, one that will take more than my own lifetime to complete. What matters is that we stay the course, learning, stumbling, trying, and committed. When George Floyd was killed, we remember that we flooded the streets to protest. We must ensure that this commitment isn't a fad or a trend that we get tired of. Our eyes have been opened. May they remain so. Last summer, after my master gardening course, I again grew tomatoes, and I don't know if it was the soil or last summer's heat and drought, but most of my crop was ruined, and it was discouraging. But that failure was an opportunity for me to learn more. I learned how to improve my soil for next year. In gardening, you need to take a long view. A beautiful garden isn't built in a season. It will take years to learn and do and redo. Years of letting things fill in and blossom, of reading and sharing and trying, of beginning again. The only real mistake is giving up. So I'm here this morning to invite you to deepen your work with us, to learn with us, to support us. This spring, we'll roll out some new walking tours to share the stories of Roxbury. Come in for a tour. We'll pilot in the year ahead the new program to partner with Roxbury businesses. Sign up with Annie after the service to learn more about it, to share your expertise, or to make a donation to fund it. Learn more from our delegates, Teresa Jacobson, Connie Counts, Lee Brammy, and delegate in training, Jane Beswick. Not in training, you've already arrived. We are airing our community conversations. Thank you so much for sponsoring the last one featuring RCC Interim President Jackie Jenkins Scott this Tuesday. Please tune in while the young people in our after-school program talk about policing in schools. Please tune in and learn more from the young people. Last summer, my garden didn't do all that I hoped. My potato crop was sparse, and you heard about my tomatoes. But I planted bushes of goldenrod for the pollinators that took, and salvia for the migrating hummingbirds that remain deep purple into the autumn. I imagine what is possible when I persevere. What's possible if we all do that? All keep trying and tending and never giving up. Amen, and may it be so.
While all of us give our time, our energy, and our resources to help make the grand vision of Unitarian Universalism real. And once a month, this congregation shares that commitment outside our borders. So we're sharing our plate this Sunday with the Urban Ministry. So I invite you now to generously support the Urban Ministry, and you can do so by pointing your camera at the QR code in your order of service or on your screen. And if you are in the sanctuary, the ushers will come around and collect it. Our offertory this morning is People Get Ready by Curtis Mayfield, with Liz Sevier singing and Michael Bruce on guitar. Well, although I did say at the beginning of the service, we do not have our usual joys and concern this morning. There is one sorrow within our First Parish community that I have been asked to share. Dave Pollock, who has recently served on our board and is an active member of the committee, did unexpectedly lose his wife Joan this past Sunday. Our caring community team has been in contact with him, and you can continue to do so through the website to see support. He is receiving support from his extended family and his close friends. And I do see him here in the sanctuary this morning as well. So we send you all our love, and we hope that you will tell us what you need, because we're so sorry.
As we hold Dave and his family in our hearts, I invite us to breathe in and breathe out and come into this sacred space for a time of prayer and meditation. Creative spirit that is at work in every nook and cranny of our earth, and every nook and cranny of our hearts, we center now in you. In this in-between time, when the ground is covered with snow, and beneath that last year's leaves, not yet blooming with next season's growth, we learn to wait, to be, to inhale and exhale, to count as precious this breath and this and this, and we enter together into this full and perfect moment in silence. Amen. I invite you to stand and join with me in our closing hymn, Building a New Way, in the Teal hymnal, number 1017. After the blessing, I invite you to stay through the postlude, which is slightly different than your order of service. Sarah Hager on the piano will play I'll Make Music by Carl Jenkins. We rose with the gifts the universe has embedded in every cell of us. Gifts of song, of dance, of laughter, gifts of wisdom, of strength, of courage. Go forth, awake and alive with your gifts, responding to life and this day as it calls you forward. Go out in faith. Amen.
Well, thank you all for joining us today for our service. I want to thank our musicians that we had today and our interim music director, Sarah Hager, for the music coordination. It was lovely. And I also want to expend our joy on having you here today, Reverend Earl. I invite everyone who's here in the sanctuary to please join us in the Parish Hall. There is a table that has materials about the urban ministry. Those of you who are online, please stay online. There will be a virtual coffee hour as well. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing.